All of my mise en place. I measured out my flour. I've got my salt. I'm just gonna sift those together. I've got my dish bin set up with for my dirty dishes. So again, always sifting your flour. And I think I have, yeah, there we go. And any salt, flip that over. And then I've gone ahead and I've measured my 3/4 cups of shortening. Let's see if I can angle more that way. And I'm gonna take I'm just gonna make a well. And I'm just gonna drop my shortening into the well. Again, you can use butter if you'd like. What you don't want to do is you do not want to get the shortening all over your fingers. All right, now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my hands and I'm going to cover up the shortening so that there's flour between my hands and the shortening, so it doesn't just all stick to my fingertips, because shortening, again, is really hard to get off your fingers. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to blend. I'm coating the proteins of the flour. All right. If anybody's ever had croissants, all right, they use butter to coat the proteins, and that's what makes them really light and flaky. It's the butter that melts in and coats the proteins. Same thing is occurring with your pie crust. All right. What I'm looking is for small peas in texture, because we want this during the baking process to melt into the proteins. So that's about it. All right, so I got small little peas. And I just put it in my hand and I just kind of shuffle it through. And there should be some that gets retained. If I wanted to go mealy for a pumpkin pie or a sweet potato pie or a key lime pie, which actually key lime has graham cracker, I would take this down a little bit more. Now, I want to add my cold water, which is in the freezer. Darn it. Excuse me. All right, so you can actually, I'm gonna break it up right here. You can see it in the camera. It's actually started to freeze a little. It's cold, all right? So when you're portioning your water, you just don't want to dump it from your liquid measuring cup. Just a little closer. You want to have your cup filled and have your measuring spoons ready to go. Now I know this recipe calls for 12 to 14 tablespoons. So I'm going to get to 10 and then start mixing. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then just like I did my dough by hand the other day, I'm just going to cave in my dry ingredients. Whoops, trying to just get it so that it's, there we go. So that it blends in. And I'm just going to pull from the sides into the center, creating my dough. Clean off my spoon. What did we say, that was 10? So here's 11, 12, 13. Just blend that in. Clean my spoon. And now I'm just going to take the dry stuff and press and fold like I did my yeast dough. But again, we don't want to overwork this. Now I can feel that this is sort of dry, so I'm going to add another tablespoon. And it's going to be 1 tablespoon at a time until I get a dough that forms. And I'm just going to kind of now sprinkle it all around. Just get it to blend. It should not be sticky. I added more flour than I normally did because I want to make sure I had enough dough. And just folding and pressing. more water. 2 more tablespoons. Should do it. Okay, and you can see the bowl, it's starting to just gather. I'm just gonna pick my dough up and just gather it. I think 1 more tablespoon should do it. Yep, that's it. Now, if time permits, you can chill this and it'll be easy to work with. And it should be a little bit flaky. Not too much. It should form into a solid mass. It's a little dry, but I don't want to add too much water. Then it's going to get really sticky. All right, so there's my dough all together. And you can see everything is off of my bowl. The bowl's nice and clean. And at some point I've got to stop working it or else it's just going to get tough. So this is where I'm going to stop right here. And I'm just going to put this aside. All right, and then I'm going to get my apples peeled. So what I have here is I have some paper towel. Let me wash my hands first. And I'm going to peel the apples right on the paper towel. I also have this device that allows you to slice and core them. So this recipe calls for 8 apples. I've already peeled and cut 4, and they're soaking right now, and I'll show you that in a second. But when you peel your apple, first thing you want to do is just take the top part off. You just carve it back. That goes on your paper towel. I'm going to carve the bottom part. That's on my paper towel. Then I'm going to cut a strip straight down. And then holding it with my thumb and my pointer finger, where am I? Oh, there I am. I'm just going to peel and twist. And any brown pieces, I'm going to peel those off. These apples were bought yesterday. And even as fresh as they are, and obviously you want to aim for the paper towel. As fresh as they are, there are still brown pieces in an apple. It's just normal. All right, once I'm done with that, then I can do the next one. So you should be able to blast through, once you get used to it, your 8 apples in about 2 minutes, once you get the hang of it. And I'm allowing the peeler to kind of curve around the contours of the apple. All right, you don't want to grip it because it's supposed to rotate. There's 2. There's 3. Last one. And then the bonus of doing it on the paper towel is now all you do is just take the paper towel and fold it up, and then you throw your skins away. And I actually have 3 paper towels, but 1 fell on the floor. So I didn't want to use that one. Then I'm going to take my coring device, just line it up, slice right through them. Get rid of my core. And then you want to go through and make sure that you get the core out, because sometimes it doesn't line up, so you may have to cut some of the apples. And I've got some apples that are soaking in lemon juice that I did while you guys were in your breakout rooms. So all I'm doing here is I'm just cutting the inside, and not all of them have to be done, but sometimes you miss and you don't center it up. And we're using McIntosh apples for this. You can use a combination of Macs and Granny's. Granny's actually had a nice sour taste to it. Golden Delicious are not really good apples, not good baking apples for apple pie. And I'm transferring these into the lemon juice because I'm trying to prevent them from oxidizing and turning brown, and that's what the lemon juice does. All right, so I'm gonna stop right there just because I want to move this along. And I'm just gonna strain the apples that I have. Prepare my apples with the filling. So I've got 3/4 of a cup of lightly packed brown sugar. I've got a 1/2 cup, 3/4 of a cup of flour. And what this does is it acts as a binding agent. That's going to go in. I've got another 3/4 of a cup of regular granulated sugar. That's going to go in. And then I've got a teaspoon of cinnamon. That's going to go in. And that is the flavoring for my apples. And all I'm going to do is now take my spatula and just kind of mix those around. And we really want to coat the apples with this. And there's going to be some dry pieces, that's okay. This is going to break down during the baking process as well. As you know, sugar, when it gets to a certain temperature, will break down and liquefy, and then the flour that's incorporated is going to act as a binding agent. It's going to thicken it up so it doesn't all run when you cut it. All right, so there are my apples. Clean up my work area. Now I'm going to roll out my crust. My pie shell, I should say. And with my pie shell, this is a closed pie, so I'm not going to divide this in half, but I'm going to divide the bottom piece a little bit bigger than the top because I need more dough for the bottom. I also have some bench flour, and what I want to do is just kind of mound this into a ball. Throw down a little bit of bench flour as I need it. Remember, more flour you add, it's just going to press into the dough and make it tougher. And then I'm just going to start in the middle, and I'm going to push and pull into my desired shape, which is a circle. I don't want to go back and forth because, again, that's working the dough. It makes it tough. If it starts to stick, a little bit of flour. Always should be sliding. Always should be sliding. Alright, and what I'm looking for is I'm looking for it to go about a 1/2 inch outside of the pan. Just about there. Just have a couple more areas to focus on, and I can do that by just starting in the middle and then rolling that out. Now what I'm going to do, a little trick, you take your dough, put it on your rolling pin, roll it back, put your pan in, and then roll it in. That's one way of getting it into the pie pan. All right, and then you want to make sure that it's tucked into the pan. Another way is if you fold the dough in half and then fold it in half again, and you take the point and center it, and then open it up, same thing. All right. Now from this point, I can use a fork and just aerate the bottom. Couple fork pricks, and that just allows the air to get in and flake it up a little bit more. I take my pie filling, and that's going all into the pie. All that goodness. I need 2 tablespoons of butter. And you just want to make sure this is even. And this would be a little bit more full if I did all of the apples. All right, but I did not because I don't have time. All right, so that's just going to sit. Take my top half, and I'm just going to roll this out large enough so that it covers the pie. This dough is really fun to work with. It's cold, it's staying together, it's not breaking apart. This is the recipe that you can find on the baking cooking website, the cookbook, Baking. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 3 tablespoons of butter that I have cut here already. And the butter, you can see that there are lines with measurements. You just want to cut straight down to what you need. And then all I'm going to do is take my fingers and I'm going to break this butter up and just kind of blotch it all over the top of the pie. Just peel it apart. And what this is going to do is it's going to bind with the flour, create an emulsification with the proteins, and help thicken this up. Butter's cold. And there's no right or wrong way to do it. It's just random breaking up the butter and getting it into your pan. And now I'm going to cover my pie shell. So just like I showed you before with the bottom layer, I'm going to take my top layer, roll it on the pin, and you can see it's not a perfect circle by any stretch. You'll never know, trust me. Take this, I'm going to roll it up, move the pie in front of me, and then I'm just going to roll this over the top. Now what I like to do for safety precautions is I like to take my bottom layer, this is why I roll the bottom layer bigger than the top, is I will now take my bottom layer and I'm just going to roll it into the top layer and just set it on the ledge. And this hopefully will prevent it from leaking out into my stove. And I do everything in front of me, so I'm twisting my pan and I'm just gently resting it on the edge of the pan. If you have some open pieces, you can take some extra dough, trim that off, and just cover that up. No one will ever know. Again, I'm working everything in front of me. Because I don't want to reach. I want to see what I'm doing. All right. Now comes the crimping part. So when you crimp, you just take your fingertip, your pointer finger and your thumb, and you're going to use your dominant finger, and you're just going to press. This I'm going to work at like 9 o'clock for me because I'm a right-handed person, and I'm just going to crimp it all the way around. And again, I'm twisting it so that it's in a manageable work area. All the way around. Good. Make sure my apples are all set. Everything sits nicely. I'm going to take my knife, put a couple holes at the top. And this will allow the pie to breathe. You can put decorative things on if you want to take some excess dough. That's your call. Pause. It's ready to go in the oven. I've got some egg wash, which is nothing more than 1 egg with about 2 tablespoons of water. And I'm just gonna coat the edges lightly, as well as the top. And we don't want a puddle of egg, because then it's just gonna scramble, and you'll have scrambled egg on your pie. That's not fun. All right, this is gonna prevent the crust from drying out too quick before it's baked. And then if you really, there we go. If you really want to kick this up a notch, I've got myself about a 1/4 cup of sugar, granulated sugar, and I'm going to take a 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon and make a cinnamon sugar mixture. Stir that up. And using my fingers, I'm just gonna kind of sprinkle some cinnamon sugar all around. Not a lot, just enough to coat it and give it a little bit more flavor around the crust and the top. And that's it. Just for sanitation purposes, making sure that it doesn't leak into your oven, I like to take a sheet tray, just put a piece of wax paper on it, you can put a piece of foil on it, and then I'll actually bake my pie on the tray. So anything that leaks out, it'll leak out onto the tray and not in your oven, creating a smoking frenzy in your house. So just another trick to keep things nice and neat and increase your rate of success. All right, so we've taken our pie out. This baked for about an hour, and as you can see, we've got a nice golden brown crust. The edges are really nice and crisp, but they're not overly crisp and overly brown. There's a little juice that leaked out a little bit, but that's okay. I've let this settle for about 10 to 15 minutes before I actually am gonna cut it. It'll be served warm, but not piping hot. So when I cut this, I'm gonna take my knife, and rather than chop it up and down and break the crust, I'm just gonna gently wedge my way to the center and make sure I get all the way down, and then I'm gonna drag the knife back. Then I'm just gonna twist it and keep everything in front of me. From this point, I'm gonna cut in 4ths, and I'm gonna cut this in 8ths. And you'll see this is super loose. You can even let it chill a little bit more, but the crust is really nice. I'm going to use an offset spatula, and I'm going to try to carefully wedge this out of the pan without making too much of a mess. And again, when this is warm, it's going to be loose, so you have to kind of move quickly when you do this. So I want to make sure I get my spatula underneath, so I get the bottom of the crust and the top. And as you can see, that's super filled. And then I'm just going to take my knife or spatula if I have one and just drag that back to maintain the integrity of the slice. And if you look inside, you can see how during the baking process that flour really thickened up the juices from the apples, the sugar, and the butter that bound together to create an emulsification. And that's pretty much it. Nice seasonal apple pie. Enjoy.